Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Cutting Edge Figure Skating Podcast. My name is Kim Dunaway, and in this episode, I'll be recapping Finlandia Trophy. And I'll be recapping all four disciplines in one podcast, which is different than my usual coverage where I break down every event one podcast at a time. But this week, I am condensing everything and putting it in one podcast. So let's start off with the ice dance, which was controversial for all the wrong reasons. And it sucks because I would rather be on the podcast talking about all the performances instead of the judging. I'm so sick of talking about the judging. I want to be able to just get on here and talk about who performed the best and which programs I liked the best. And I can talk about that, but if I don't talk about all these other controversies, then I'm completely glossing over what has become just such a shit show at this point. It's insane. So we had the same tech controller this week as we had last week in Skate America. Sean Redstadt, who has been calling things very, very strict, which at least it's been consistent across the board. I will give him that. In the past 2 weeks, I don't think we've had a single midline step sequence called over a level 2, which when the season starts, that's not super out of character. And you will see the step sequences usually get better as the season gets on. And then you'll see the 1s and 2s become 3s. And occasionally you'll see a 4 in there somewhere, but not super common. But it feels as though we've regressed when all of a sudden we're getting level 1s. It caused a lot of frustration, not just amongst the fans. I saw a lot of frustration in the media, and then it spilled over into the athletes themselves as well. So in the rhythm dance, we had only 4 skaters get a level 2 on their midline step. Everyone else got a level 1, and those 4 skaters were James Hernandez, Maya Shibutani, both Singas and Kolesnik, and those were the 4 skaters. Interesting, meaning that Piper Paul, Guillaume Laurence, Tashlers, Browns, none of the other teams who've been around for a very long time, some of them that I just named, didn't get over a level 1, which is interesting. At least last week, everybody got low levels, but it still seemed like Chalk and Bates, LeJoie and Legat were at least getting the level 2s, and we didn't see those teams getting level 1s. And here, they did. And it was very frustrating for both Guillaume and Piper, who both had quite a bit to say in the media and in the press conference after the fact. For Guillaume, he felt like that it was basically insulting for them to be getting level 1s, and feels like that if the top teams are not getting at least level 3s at this point in the season, that there's something wrong. Piper felt like that if they're getting level 1s, that it makes them look like junior skaters. So the only thing I would push back on what Guillaume said is I don't like the implication that all they have to do is show up and they should be getting a level 3. You've still got to skate to that level to get that kind of a call, right? But I do think it's also fair that the quality of these skaters out there were definitely doing step sequences higher than a level 1. And the ones that got level 2s is interesting, especially in the case of somebody like Maya Shibutani, who this is just her second competition back in 8 years. And for her to get a level 2 and not to see that from Laurent or Piper or Natalie Tashlarova, it just doesn't make a lot of sense. And the pattern step, 4 teams got level 2: Zingas Kolesnik, Smart Deke, Shibutanis, Orihar, and Pirinen. Again, the top 2 teams here got level 1s. Becker and Hernandez actually got a base level, which they come in basically as sort of the 10th team. If anybody's going to get the lowest scoring, it's them. Is what they did at the level of a base? I honestly couldn't tell you. I don't know what bar we're using. It's so inconsistent from competition to competition, and this is not new. A lot of times we've talked about how up until this season, the scoring at Skate Canada has been very inflated, right? And so sometimes that's just kind of the way that it is at different Grand Prix. You're going to see sometimes harsher tech calling than what you're going to see at other Grand Prix. And that goes really across all four disciplines, especially in singles with the ladies and with ice dance. And it definitely can affect scoring and people getting into Grand Prix finals, as I'll get into a little bit later. But here, it was really shocking in a way, on top of some other things that happened as well, that just caused a bubbling over of frustration from a lot of fans. For me, I think I'm becoming more and more disillusioned with ice dance, sadly, with the lack of a compulsory pattern, with the way that we have moved away from what feels like skating skills to more vibes. And in this competition, everybody's kind of on the same playing field if they're all going to get level 1. So it just comes down to PCS and GOE. It's just weird. And then in addition to the pattern step and the midline step, there were some interesting twizzle calls, as I'll get into as well, particularly Gleb Smolkin and with Piper Gillis. And then in the free dance, again, no step sequences or 1 foot turn sequences above level 2. Most of them were level 1s. So it was a weird competition in that. Caused lower scoring across the board. Lots of conspiracy theories floating around as to why this has happened. I saw some say, oh, they're trying to push Piper and Paul down. It's hard for me to really go with that because I feel like had Piper got her twizzles to her normal quality in the rhythm dance, they might very well would have won this competition. So I don't know. We'll see. But let's get into the results. But I'm going to go out on the limb and say that I don't think we're going to see Sean Redstadt as the tech controller at Grand Prix Final. All right, the winners here, as expected, were Laurence Fournier-Baudry and Guillaume Cizeron of France. And Laurence has become a citizen since the last time we saw her in the Grand Prix France. I was very interested to see what they would score this week compared to what they scored in Grand Prix France at home. I feel like we can kind of throw all the scores away this week, so I don't feel like we got any real information in terms of scoring from this. But they had a more successful outing in the rhythm dance, in that there was no fall in the choreographic rhythm sequence like it was last time. However, there was a big controversy and a big issue, like how does this even happen, kind of an issue with their rhythm dance. So I saw their rhythm dance first, and then I went and looked up the scores. And I saw that the choreographic rhythm sequence was first. And I was like, did they change their program? Because I remember their choreographic rhythm sequence being last in France because that's when Guillaume fell. But I was like, no, I'm positive that they did it last again. So I went back and rewatched it and saw where they had scored. I guess I wasn't paying attention to the tech box when I watched it originally, where they had scored the choreographic rhythm sequence first. And I was like, huh? It made absolutely no sense to me because they have an order of elements that they're going to perform. And they actually gave them positive GOE for that when they didn't do anything. So that whole thing was just so strange, like how that even could happen, which meant that they didn't get any credit for their actual choreographic rhythm sequence that they did at the end of the program. They ended up getting an exclamation point on that element for not completing the requirements because, of course, that wasn't the actual rhythm sequence that they had in their program. But they got 4.79 points on the element. If you compare that to Piper and Paul, who got 7.57 points on the element, looks like they lost about 3 points there and would have been somewhere around 83-ish points for their rhythm dance, which still would have been below what we saw Madison and Evan get last week. But again, like we said, we got to throw these scores out completely. They were totally useless in terms of any kind of a benchmark. They were really not happy about their scores when they got them. And of course, they were second out. Shibutanis went first, and then them. You're thinking, there's no way that 79 points is going to hold up the rest of the day. And I was working during the rhythm dance. It was like one of the only few events all weekend I wasn't really able to see live. So I think I was able to tune into like the last 3 teams. And I made a joke while it was going on. Is anybody going to hit 80 today? And the answer was no. No one hit 80 the rest of the day. It was, I can't remember a competition at a Grand Prix level where we haven't seen a team hit 80. We have to go back. Do we have to go back to the +3 era? I don't know. I didn't do research to go back and look. But that was just bizarre in itself. But they go the distance. They also won the free dance here. It's a very strong and well skated piece. It does feel a little pretentious, maybe. Not as pretentious as like the Guillaume and Gabby free dance to a poem, but there are some pieces that do. But it is just a very, very well done program. And they win here, and no surprise. In second place was Piper Gillis and Paul Poirier of Canada, and I do think they had an opportunity to win here. Unfortunately, in their rhythm dance, had an issue with Piper's twizzles. Was the call still harsh? Yes. So they did a little bit of tweaking to their rhythm dance music. A lot of us didn't like the I'm Too Sexy part in their original piece that they debuted at Skate Canada, so they actually took that part out. The middle section to me still feels a little too proper. But the big issue here was Piper's twizzles, and she got called at a base level for her twizzles, which a lot of people thought was probably too harsh. She wasn't the only person complaining about her twizzles. Gleb Smolkin did with his also. That cost them 2.5 to 3 points, and they lost by 2 points. Very well could have won the title had those twizzles been clean. So I think what we come to conclude from this showdown between these two is we don't know yet. We don't really know yet if this is a 3-horse race between the French, the Canadians, and the US team, if it's a 2-horse race or a 1-horse race and everybody else. I think I would still put Fournier, Baudry, and Cizeron out ahead of Chalk and Bates and Gillis and Poirier. But I don't know. We'll find out in a couple weeks where everybody stands a little bit better. In the free dance, a lot of people have really talked about Piper's dress, that they don't like it. They think it's too literal, too bright. I really love her dress. I just like it a lot. I really like a lot of different parts of this program. It still doesn't completely capture the magic that the original Vincent program did, and I don't think it's ever going to get there, honestly. But I really like the speed on their pair spin. I just don't think it feels Olympic. The transitional content into their twizzles feels a little silly to me. I don't know. I don't know if this is it, but we'll see what it looks like in a couple weeks when we get all 3 teams together with a different tech hauler. Third place here was a nice surprise, and this was Zingas and Kolesnik of the United States. I really thought that Smart and Deke would probably hit the podium here, and Zingas and Kolesnik would be just on the outside looking in of Grand Prix Final. But they continue to have tremendous success this year. In fact, when is the last time that we had Igor with a really good team? I mean, Christina and Anthony were with Igor before they switched to Scott Moyer, but they were very much up and coming. They hadn't really cracked into the top 3 at nationals yet. I think they won a pewter medal the last time they were with Igor. And then Igor had Chalk and Bates, but that was before they went to Ice Academy of Montreal, and they've been with Ice Academy of Montreal now for a couple of quads. So it's been a while since Igor has been as relevant as he is right now. In the rhythm dance, they had the highest tech score of the day, which was it because they were the cleanest team, or was it because there was an American tech controller? That I don't know, but they did perform really well and they were really strong. I find myself more and more watching Emilia than I watch Vadim. When this team first got together, I was just so entranced with Vadim, his posture, his carriage. I would just watch him pretty much the whole time. But now there are times when I forget he's there. And that's no shade to Vadim. That's just how much Emilia has impressed and grown. Somebody put a post about her on Reddit talking about how she's gone from basically kind of like the bottom of world championships as a single skater skating for Cyprus to now making Grand Prix Final in a very short period of time. And this could inspire other skaters to go to ice dance, which we're starting to see a little bit in Japan. But it also may be that she's just a unicorn, that this is not going to be typical of what we're going to see when people try to jump to ice dance from another discipline. In their free dance, they are one of the teams skating to Romeo and Juliet. In fact, there were 2 Romeo and Juliet free dances at this event. They very much had Grand Prix Final on the brain. Emilia said after the event that she was trying not to think about it, but everybody kept asking them about it, and they both kind of had it on the brain, and that she was really nervous sort of getting into it, but just right before, just kind of calmed down. I really liked the beginning of their character step. The whole program, I think, is really strong. When they were in the kiss and cry and they got their scores, you could hear her say, "We did it." And just that realization that they were in Grand Prix Final. And I don't think that this was in either one of their bingo cards at the beginning of the season. They were just trying to make the Olympic team like everybody else. And the question now is, are they team number 2? Because going into this season, it felt very strongly that it was Chalk and Bates and Carrera and Ponomarenko, and it was going to be a fight between Green and Parsons, the Shibutanis, and Zingas and Kolesnik. And right now, it looks like Chalk and Bates, Zingas and Kolesnik, and a fight between Green and Parsons and Carrera and Ponomarenko for the 3rd spot, with the Shibutanis being a very long shot, in my opinion. But I'll get to them in a second. They actually got 2 first place votes. So even though people complain about the tech caller, the judges weren't completely sold on Piper and Paul or the French team at this event either. So good on Emilia and Vadim. In 4th place was Olivia Smart and Tim Deek of Spain. In the rhythm dance, changed her costume a little bit. She has got a skirt now. Really appreciate the curve lift that they do in their rhythm dance. So many teams do rotational lifts, so it's so cool to see something a little bit different. Their free dance, I like the program. It's cool. I just don't think it's as cool as last year's. And I don't think that they're going to reach the heights that they did last year either, because there's just an element of same. They do a lot of the similar moves that they did in last year's. There's just a different spin on it, but it still has a little bit of that sameness to it. The costumes even beautiful again, but a little samey to last year's. And I know it's part 2. I mean, I would love to see like an entire 8-minute version of both of them back to back. I think it would be very interesting to watch. It would either be incredible or you felt like you were watching the same program twice. The lifts are still cool. The character step is fine. It's the weakest part of the program for me, and I feel like I felt the same way about last year's as well. Great ending pose. And they end up here in 4th place. In 5th place was the Shibutanis. And they were better here than they were in Japan. However, again, because of the tech calling, their scores weren't a lot better here than what they were in Japan. So it's difficult to gauge their progress based upon their scores. The rhythm dance, they didn't get a exclamation point on their choreographic rhythm sequence like they did in Japan. It was still fun. I still really do like this rhythm dance a lot for them. They were 7th in PCS and 6th in GOE. So they definitely are not getting any kind of reputation points or scoring from the judges like they were probably hoping that they would get coming in as prior Olympic medalists. In the free dance, they changed their costumes. I think she used like a recycled dress in NHK. Here they're in all black. I don't like the all black look. I do think that they need some kind of color. It looks like they're going to a funeral. Even like the style of dress that she's wearing just looks very matronly. I know you're skating with your brother, but it could have a little bit of excitement to it somewhere. I just think that it was a mistake to repeat this program. I think it was a mistake not to do any challengers. Their 1 foot turns look very awkward and uncomfortable. I think the last minute or so of the program it looked more free, but the first like 3 quarters just to me seemed really tense. In sixth place was Davis and Smolkin of Georgia. And they definitely didn't score anywhere near what we have been seeing from them at other points this season. They made some pretty big changes in their rhythm dance. They changed his costume significantly. They now have some mesh on her pants. I was kind of disappointed, honestly, because I thought that they had one of the more 90s costumes out of everybody. In fact, they have been one of my favorite rhythm dances in a sea of rhythm dances that I just haven't really liked. And I don't like the changes. Honestly, they're still using Pretty Fly for a White Guy for the beginning and for the end. The middle section previously was to Destiny's Child, Bills, 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 which feels like a weird matchup on paper, but I thought it really worked. They took out Bills, Bills, Bills and put in another Offspring song called Come Out and Play. And I just personally liked the previous version better. They said after that they wanted to go more rock, lean into the 90s rock a little bit more, and that's why they changed the song. To me, it almost feels like they're trying to get more into the vibe of the Leonard Skinner free skate that they did last year, which I like to see variety. I don't like to see a lot of the same thing all the time. So while that worked last year for their free program, I just feel like the changes here didn't quite work. But maybe when I see it again at Europeans, I'll feel differently. But as to right now, I felt like it was a downgrade. And how are we feeling about Gleb's manliner? Like, I feel like maybe it's a bit too much. But again, maybe that's them leaning into the 90s rock a little bit more. The grunge look. What do you think? Their free skate, I still really love. They didn't change this program. There's just a lot of moments I really like. Like, I love the knee slide out of the twizzles. I just feel like it shows really great control. I feel like that curve lift that they do is just sublime. Looks so difficult, but they make it look really easy. There's no way this team 4 years ago, the team that was doing like Tango Roxanne, that came out of nowhere to make the Olympic team for Russia, could have done this program. The end, I think, is very lovely. It just shows a lot of growth for them. And although they didn't get the scores and the placement that they probably wanted here, I thought that they had pretty good performances. In seventh place was Orihara and Pirinen of Finland. My favorite parts of their rhythm dance is the midline step to If You Can't Dance. I think the music of that just goes so well with the accents that they're doing in their midline step. And I do like their choreographic rhythm sequence to Spice Up Your Life. I think it's really fun. The rhythm dance paired with their free dance feels like a lot of the same to me, whereas a lot of teams show a lot more contrast. Like, we get kind of this upbeat, high energy rhythm dance, and then we get kind of like this slow, moody, classical or what have you, different free skates. That's why I feel like that's why we get so many teams that do a lot of a similar kind of vibe for the free dance, because the last several years we've had all these kind of high energy, up tempo rhythm dances. And with them, they are always doing like a high energy, up tempo free dance as well, which is fine, but it just feels like they're always at an 11. And this team can show restraint and do it very well. Like, I still loved that Sirens free dance that they did 3 seasons ago before they just leaned into the musical theater. And I would just love to see them revisit that and go back to that and show some more range. There's a few things in their free dance that I would love to see a little bit more from them. Like, there's a part in the middle that has like a tango style music. And I really wish they would have leaned more into the tango there. The part before the character step where they lift their skirts and shake their booty, to me, it's just a little weird. The character step itself is wild. I don't know if I love it or not. I can't decide if it's good for ice dance or not. I do love the commitment. I will give them that. In 8th place was the Tashlers. This was definitely a very disappointing finish for them. There's a big issue with them in their rhythm dance. They had changed their music and they had some issues uploading it before the competition. And there were some issues when they were in practice with the music as well. So it appears that they had an older cut of it and it threw them off in the performance here. So I went back and watched their Nepala rhythm dance and their rhythm dance at NHK Trophy. I synced it with this performance and watched them like side by side, one on the TV, one on my phone. Both the Nepala and the NHK were about 2 seconds off at some point. It was like a point in the, I think in the Eureka Iglesias song where there was like a 2 seconds off somewhere. And that must have been what it was that threw them off. The choreography was all the same, but they were really upset, and understandably so. You could see her mouth after the rhythm dance. That's not fair. In fact, when she got off, she said, "What the F?" And Mark goes, "Oops." They did not get that. In fact, it's still in the replay too. They did not censor that off whatsoever. So they didn't score as well as they would have liked to have scored in the rhythm dance. And then in the free dance, they changed her dress in the rhythm dance. She was wearing like a mesh 2-piece kind of inspired piece before, and now she's gone to a bright pink dress for the rhythm dance. And in the free dance, they've also changed her costumes here from kind of a leather piece that they were doing before to something else. Don't really like the opening music. It just sounds like mumbled words to me. I think it would work better if it started with one of the other pieces of music that they use. The big issue for them here was in their 1-foot turn sequence. Natalie just kind of lost her edge, and it was still called a level 2, and his was called a level 1, which was interesting. So weird to me. That was the only element that they had with negative GOE. In fact, it was the only element in the entire free skate out of all 10 teams that had negative GOE. So they actually finished 10th in the free skate and fell and ultimately finished 8th, which is unfortunate for them. In both of their outings, I think they've finished lower than what they would have liked, even though they were 4th at NHK. I think they would have liked to have been on the podium. So I feel like, again, we don't have exactly an idea of how this new coaching situation is working out for them quite yet. But she's very, very disappointed here. Last week, she posted on her Instagram account, I shared it on the Cutting Edge Instagram account as well, about people just body shaming her a lot, which is just like, people just like, get a life. Like, what are you doing? I don't understand the audacity of people to just body shame and send negative comments to people. It's just stupid. Like, just get a life. Stop already. All right, moving on. In 9th place was the Browns, and they were going back to back from Skating and Skate America last week. Would have loved to have used that momentum that they had last week and skated so well here, but fortunately for them, did not happen in the rhythm dance. Gage just totally lost it in the first set of twizzles. He tried to get back into the second set, but it just was like too far gone. He wasn't able to complete enough revolutions to get any credit for that whatsoever. So they only got credit for Una's twizzles, and then it felt a little frantic from him after that twizzle set, really the whole rest of the program. And then in the free dance, their twizzles were a lot better. The program itself was very strong. The character step is so fun, but they skated very early because of their mistakes and just didn't score as well as we saw them score last week when we're at the bottom of the standings here, unfortunately. And then Becker and Hernandez were also going back to back, and they really did well in both of their programs here. All right, let's look at the qualifiers for Grand Prix Final. We have Madison Chalk and Evan Bates and Laurence and Guillaume winning both of their events, and so they're going in as the top qualifiers, 30 points apiece. Maddie and Evan go in with the higher scoring of the two, even though Laurence and Guillaume had that huge score in their free dance at Grand Prix France. They had that fall, which affected their rhythm dance score at France, and then very low scores at this event put them behind Madison and Evan in terms of score. Then we have Fear and Gibson, who won a Grand Prix and were second in a Grand Prix with 28 points, and then Gillis and Poirier with 28 points also. But because Fear and Gibson have a higher score than what Piper and Paul got, because they had pretty low score in their free dance at Skate Canada, and then of course again the low scores here, they're going to be in that first group. At Grand Prix Final, there's only room for 5 dance teams on the ice. We can't do 6, so they have 2 warm-up groups. And so it's nice to get in that second warm-up group so that you can get a little bit better scores. And so that's going to be Fear and Gibson this time and not Piper and Paul. And then Reed and Ambrula Vicious and Emilia Zingas and Vadim Kolesnik round out the 6 here. The first alternate is Marjorie Lajoie and Zach Lagat of Canada. All right, I'm going to move on to the pairs event. And this event was won by Hassi and Volodin of Germany. This event was incredibly close after the short program. There were 4 teams with 70 points in change. In fact, a lot of people were confused as to why Leah Pereira and Trip Michaud were not on top, since they were the only team that was clean in the short program. But all of the pair teams pretty much do the same thing. They all do a triple twist. They all do a side-by-side triple toe or triple salchow. Occasional team like Nagioka and Muraguchi who do side-by-side triple loops for a little bit higher. Pretty much are all doing a throw triple loop. Occasionally you'll have a team do a throw triple flip or lutz, which is worth 0.3 more. And they're all doing the same lift. And they're all doing the same spiral in the short program. So they all start with the same level of difficulty, basically. And what differentiates the teams, besides the execution of the elements, obviously, is levels. Levels on the twist, levels on the death spiral, levels on the pair spin. The pair spin has been like a disaster for some teams. And in the case of Leah and Trent, they were level issues that kept them underneath teams that had mistakes. To the winners here, Minerva Hassi and Nikita Volodin. In their short program, they lost their death spiral. So he lost that pivot foot, and you could see it kind of very obviously didn't get in it. And so they lost that element completely, and that caused them to be right at that 70-point mark versus what we would normally see from them around 76 or so. So we still haven't seen them be able to get to that height that we have seen Meltik and Buralava or the Japanese pair get. They'll have to wait a little bit longer to see if they can get those heights. In the free skate, Nikita fell on the triple salchow, and they only got a level 2 on their back outside death spiral. So a couple of little things for them to still won with no problem here, but a couple of mistakes. One thing I did notice is they did hold that dance lift that they do in their program a little bit longer here than what they did earlier in the season. Looked so much better. I do like the program a little bit better. It still, for me, is probably behind most of the other free skates that were at this competition, but they do skate it very well. Someone said again, I've read so much content, Golden Skate, Reddit, Figure Skating Universe, Facebook, somewhere, that they've taken out some of their transitions in this program. I haven't gone back like I did with the Tashlers to go back and look at their previous Grand Prix and see if there were some differences, but I'll definitely see if I can do that in between now and Grand Prix Final. In second place here was Alicia Efimova and Misha Mitrofanov of the U.S. So the battle of the 2 U.S. teams, the last 2 national champions. Once again, Alicia and Misha come out ahead, just like they did at Worlds and at Nationals. In the short program, it was the side-by-side triple toe yet again that Alicia could not land. She did keep her butt off of the ice. When they did the slow-mo, they take off at different times. And it's almost like we get a little bit of pre-rotation maybe from Alicia on her takeoff. She did not get all the way around, and he's in the air before she is. But as a whole, they look incredible together. Misha makes everything look very easy. He kind of reminds me of Brandon Fraser that way, where Brandon was always just looking like he was on cruise control the entire time. If he's in a spiral, if he's at the bottom of a lift. I thought that their side-by-side spins looked pretty good. They got level 4s on everything except the twist. And they got a personal best and got over 70 points for the first time, and they were very, very happy with that. In the free skate, not everybody loves the love story music that they use. Every time I hear love story, it takes me back to Sally and Peltier's free skate that I hated. The costumes and just all of it. But anyway, I don't mind it so much because they're using the lyrics in this particular version of it, but I know a lot of people don't really like it. Alicia Efimova landed some side by sides. It was like watching Emily Chan a couple weeks ago. It was like, hey, she landed that triple Salchow, double axel. She gutted out the triple toe, a little double foot landing on the throw, but very good outing for them, 135.5. And they got a silver here, which is fantastic for them. I did see a little bit of kinesiology tape on her back. So some sort of issue for Alicia there. In third place was Cameron O'Shea. And, or if you were the announcer in Finland, Danny O'Shea. Poor guy. I mean, I'm not one to talk about people's pronunciations. Good Lord knows I struggle mightily on the podcast at times, but I got a kick out of that. In their short program, it was not the cleanest. A step out on the throw loop, of course. They didn't get level 4s on everything, but they were number 2 in PCS in the short program. 3 judges actually put them in first, and then Japan had them in 5th. They were tied with Nagioka and Moriguchi for the highest scoring lift of the short program. They do have really fantastic lifts. Before the free skate, her zipper broke on her dress, and Marie-France Dubray was backstage literally sewing her in to her dress, and they were having issues with it kind of throughout the performance. Don't know how much it affected them. They did really well, better than what they normally do. They landed both of their throws. In fact, the throw Lutz, I feel like, has been a little bit better for them than the throw loop. So I'm wondering should they put that in the short program instead of the throw loop? I don't know. Just a thought. Really gutted out the throw Salchow. The issue was the side-by-side jump. She stepped out of the triple Salchow, and so they didn't get their double axel off. So they lost a lot of points on that. And that was a big deal because that kept them behind Alicia and Misha. And the third step on the podium was not enough to get them to Grand Prix Final. They needed to be second here. Marie-France was actually in the kiss and cry with them. They do a little bit of training at Ice Academy of Montreal. I remember Danny talking about that last year at Skate America in the press conference after the short program, talking about how difficult it was and all of the different drills and what they do there, but it makes them so much of a better skater, and a lot of the transitional content that's in their programs is developed by them in Montreal. All right, so that was the top 3. Moving on from there, in 4th place was Nagioka and Moriguchi of Japan. Not their best outing here, and still did pretty well. They were 5th after the short program and moved up to 4th after their free skate. In the short program, had big issues on the spin. She struggled in a couple of places. She did get all of her rotations, but it was really messy. The free skate, again, several different issues. She put a hand down on her triple loop, but she was still able to get both double axles off after that. It really didn't cost them that much. They couldn't land either of their throws cleanly, but once again, they were first in lifts. Only got a base level on their death spiral. So I scored 129 points with all of those kind of different mistakes there. Shows me that they've got potential to go 140 pretty easily if they can get all these elements together cleanly. I just really love their youthful energy. They have a really well choreographed program, and there's just so much potential here with this team. Like, this team and Zhang and He Wang just excite me so much, like, going forward into the next Olympic cycle. In Fifth place here was Leah Pereira and Trent Michaud, and they were very close to the podium after the short program, but Trent was just really off in the free skate. They got lower levels in the short program, as I mentioned at the top, just a level 2 on their twist, just a level 3 on their step sequence and on their spin. Also, just barely any GOE on that spin as well. In the free skate, Trent only got a single axle off of what was supposed to be their 3-jump combination with the 2 double axles. They had a fluke fall from both of them right after that, which was so weird, which cost them 2 points. Somehow they managed to land the throw after that, but then he fell on the triple Salchow. It's a pretty good choreographed program, but too many mistakes. So kind of like Skate Canada, I feel like we still haven't been able to get the full effect of this mission program from them yet, because they've made a lot of mistakes both the times that we've seen it on the Grand Prix. In sixth place here was Zhang and Huang of China. Not as successful here as they were in their home Grand Prix. Their short program, they're skating to Nemesis, which was the same music that Nathan Chen used at both Olympics for his short program. Biggest issue was their side-by-side spins. They just seemed to be spinning at different speeds. She was spinning slower. I think he tried to slow down at some point to try to match her, and then he fell out of the camel variation. Just was not good there. Really cost them pretty deeply because their jumping elements were good. Their free skate, really nice unison on their 3-jump combo. Most teams just cannot get it together when they start adding those double axles in, but they were perfectly fine with their triple toe, single axle, double axle combo. Only a double Salchow for him. That was really the only mistake in the program. The throws were gorgeous. This really cool entry into their Group 3 lift. So just some really nice moments in the program. They just have some really unique positions in some of their transitional content and their pair spin. I just love this team so much. In seventh place was Gilardi and Ambrosini of Italy. They are just so fortunate that Beccari and Garisi have had a lot of injuries and are just not in any kind of condition to compete for that Olympic spot because they have just really struggled. Big mistakes in their free skates. He only did like an axle in their double axle combo, just not even a full rotation. Didn't get any credit for that whatsoever, no points. They did a single Lutz for their throw, and just they have really nice programs, but the last 2 seasons they have just struggled so much technically that I just wonder if there's some injuries or what exactly is kind of going on with them. And then in last place was Chechnina and Wozniak. Just a lot of issues. The biggest issue in the short program was a fall on the throw, but in the free skate, just all the jumping elements were a mess. He fell on the triple toe. One of their lifts wasn't very smooth. I just feel like they've regressed majorly this season. I saw some kinesiology tape on her groin. Don't know if there's some injury, obviously, somewhere with her as well. Some of their transitional content isn't even smooth. So they're just very unfortunate to see them sort of take some steps back this season. So if we look at our Grand Prix qualifiers for pairs, we've got Riku and Ryuichi of Japan, Sarah and Nicolo of Italy, Minerva and Nikita of Germany. We've got Maltikina and Barilava of Georgia, Deanna and Max from Canada, and Pavlova and Shevchenko of Hungary. So we've got 6 different countries all represented in pairs. No American teams. And Sui and Han are the first alternates for pairs. All right, moving on to the ladies. This event was won by Mona Chibe, and somehow she is the only lady to win 2 Grand Prix this season. She came from behind. She was second after the short program, but in her free skate, very strong. The Romeo and Juliet has grown on me a little bit. I was very bored by it when I saw it the first time this season, but it has grown on me. She just skated very free, I thought, in that free skate, and she was really fired up at the end. She was arms humping. We don't usually see that kind of emotion out of her. She clearly wanted to get in Grand Prix Final again. And I feel like she's a really good example for the Japanese ladies. She's somebody that doesn't need an Ultra C element. I feel like we've seen a lot of Japanese ladies, Rinka and Hana Yoshida and Rion Sumiyoshi, that are trying some really difficult jumps that have, for the most part, not turned out really well for them in an effort to try to get ahead of other skaters. And you see people like Mona Chibe and Kaori, and Kaori was one who was trying quads at one point. And when she abandoned them and just really focused on the jumps that she does and do them well, and focus on her programs and her skating skills, she really, really skyrocketed. And it might be some good advice for some of the other Japanese ladies who are, there's nothing wrong with trying big jumps. I mean, it can definitely give you an edge, but there's also something to be said about just doing really clean triples. In second place was Amber Glenn. She was clean in her short program, apparently had been struggling on the triple axel some either in practice or in warm-up or both, but got 75 points in her short program, which is below her personal best. We've seen her get 78 points, but she ended up getting a call on her combo, and that cost her a few points. In her free skate, she started off really strong. The only issue was a double Lutz, but she got a couple of calls, which Monet did also in her free skate, but she lost to Monet on the PCS mark by a couple of points, and she also lost 4 points on her tech score from the calls, and that was the margin of defeat for her. But alas, she's in the Grand Prix Final for the second year in a row. In third place here was Rina Matsuke doing some of her magic, coming from behind. She was another one, big victim of calls in her short program. Her starting tech score was 36 points, and it ended at 30. So she lost over 6 points from calls on her triples, unclear edge. She got 2 unders, level 3 on her steps, and 2 of her spins. So for somebody with such high quality skills, got to get some of those levels up a little bit better so she can get up to 70 points, which I know she's capable of. In her long program, skating to the Nutcracker Pas de Deux, just got a just beautiful dress. I even love the little flower detail that she has around her bun. As she's skating, her arms are just gorgeous. She has this very 90s spiral sequence in there, nice arm variation, and her catch foot spin. It's just a really nice program. She had the green wordle going, and she goes all the way from 6th to finish 3rd and make it onto the podium, and she edged out Brady Tennell, who finished 4th for the second Grand Prix this season for her. She was also 4th at Skate Canada. Nice short program, but calls, and the same issue in her free skate. Her tech score went from 70 to 62. She did 7 triples in this program. 6 of them got calls, and she was less than 3 points away from the bronze, and it's all there. Half the calls, and would have been enough probably for her to get bronze. You know, in comparison to Skate Canada, several jumping passes there got negative GOE, but she only got 2 calls. So is it the caller? Was she tighter here? I mean, Mark was calling out most of her under rotations as she was going, which, oh my gosh, it was so nice to have Mark Hanratty back. It was so nice to have the world feedback. Anyway, so I think overall, I mean, 2 fourth place finishes is really a good Grand Prix for her. It's just not enough to try to knock out one of those other ladies who 2 of them are in Grand Prix Final and one of them is first alternate. In 5th place was Madeline Skeesis, who had a great rebound from what we saw from her in Skate Canada. She has gone back to her Lion King short program. She was doing Black Swan before, but apparently was able to get some issues figured out with some licensing, music rights for her short program. She likes this better, and so now she's got 2 repeat programs. It was always a plan for her to do Butterfly Lovers for her free skate this year. She just decided to sort of go with it early last season, but now we've got yet another repeat program again, but so strong. She was 3rd after the short program. I didn't think she would hold up to stay on the podium, and she did not, but she still did really well in the free skate. Really, the only issue was that instead of a triple Lutz triple toe, she did triple Lutz double toe. And she had a little issue, I think, on her triple loop. But really, it was strong in her free skate. No undercalls. In fact, her and Ida were the only 2 ladies in the competition to not get any under rotation calls in that free skate. In 6th place was Ida Karhunen of Finland, hometown girl, had a pretty decent short program, but her free skate I really enjoyed. Loved the costume for her doing Swan Lake, and she moved all the way up to finish in the top 6. And the other skater I'm going to talk about is Ryun Sumiyoshi of Japan, who's coming off of a third place finish for the 4th year in a row at Grand Prix France and was hoping to get on the podium again here. She had a path to make Grand Prix Final as well, but just did not go her way here. It started for her in the short program. She had 2 big issues. She had a poor landing on her triple flip, but then she just fell in her step sequence. Just like, I don't know, she hit a rut, something with her skate, what have you, and just took a hard fall, just like right on her back. In her free skate, she had 3 falls, including her attempt at a quad toe, which was also called under. 5 of her jumping passes got calls ranging from a Q to full downgrade. She's another one doing a repeat program, just not the magic for her, unfortunately, this year. The other person that I'll talk about was Luna Hendricks, who came into this competition and in the short program was debuting a new short program to Celine Dion, fell on her triple lutz and her triple flip, so she didn't get a combo off. Her other elements in her PCS really kept her in it. So even though she was at 54 points near the bottom of the standing, she was only 10 points out of third. And we know Luna can come out and go 140 easy, but she was not feeling well this week, under the weather, hadn't been able to eat a whole lot, and she withdrew from the free skate, understandably so. All right, that's the last I'm going to talk about of the ladies. Let's look at the Grand Prix Final qualifiers. We've got Mona Chibe in with 30 points, Kaori, Amber Glenn, and Alyssa Liu all winning one event and coming in second at one event with 28 points. Amy Nakai with a first and a third. And then Rinko Watanabe, the lone lady who did not win a Grand Prix, and she made it with 24 points with a bronze and a silver. Isabeau Levito is the first alternate, and interestingly, Isabeau just got really unlucky with Grand Prix France. Her total score from both of her Grand Prix was over 20 points higher than Rinka's total score at her Grand Prix. So she was much closer to the other 5 ladies that qualified, and if we were going on total score, she would have qualified. There's always talk, people say, should they just use total score? Because sometimes it feels unfair if you get at a Grand Prix where there's lots of really good talent there. But then you also have issues where you have uneven calling at certain events. And so some events score a lot higher than others. And so then you would want the placements to get in. So what do you do? It's unfortunate for Isabeau that she just misses out on it. And honestly, a couple of calls at Skate Canada, she might would have won Skate Canada and been there anyway. But I think she's, as long as she shows up and does well at nationals, she's, in my mind, on that Olympic team. She's just, her and Alyssa and Amber have just all proved themselves so much. And I would have liked to have seen 3 U.S. ladies and 3 Japanese ladies in the Grand Prix final, but it wasn't meant to be. All right, last event was the men's event, and this was won by Yuma Kageyama of Japan. He had to come from behind. Very uncharacteristic mistakes from him in his short program. He fell on his trademark quad sow, and he stepped out of his triple axel. In the free skate, absolutely nothing wrong with that quad sow. It was gorgeous. Very close to the boards, but gorgeous. Did a quad toe, triple toe, no quad flip here. No attempt at a quad lutz like we kind of saw him do last season. Don't know if they're saving that flip to add later on the season or if they've abandoned it completely if it hasn't been going well and this is the tech content that they're going to stick with. He still had a couple of issues late in the program. He tried a quad toe. So he was going in for a quad toe and either his speed or his timing or something was off. He did a triple flip there instead. So then he goes to what was, I guess, going to be his triple flip and then tries the quad toe, but he can't hang on to it. Wasn't a full fall, but it was close. And then right after, he kind of messy triple axel double toe in there. And it was so unfortunate because he was doing so well before that miss on the quad toe takeoff. But overall, it was enough, and not a messy men's event like we saw last week, but still not perfect, So it was enough for him to pull out the win here. Still not entranced by the first 2/3 of this Turandot program, but I love the ending of it very much so. In second place was Adam Sio Himfa of France, who was skating with new skates here, which made him very brave. So he didn't know what to expect going into the short program. Are we going to have a Kevin moment where he falls on everything? Nope. Instead, he just landed everything. He didn't get a triple toe off of his quad toe, a la Kazuki Tomono. But other than that, he was actually leading after the short program, which I feel like we haven't seen that from Adam in a while. His free skate, a lot of messy landings. The performance quality just isn't quite there for me in the first half. There's just so much focus on the quads, and the quads aren't very strong. At some point, he pulls down his shirt. Not really sure what that's supposed to do. I feel like Adam would have just shined so well in the 6.0 era, or in an era where he could just do easy, clean triples and not the crazy quads that are inconsistent. And he's, of course, does a backflip in these new skates, but I feel like his backflip doesn't add anything. I feel like when Elia does it, it makes sense with the music or the accent. And I feel like Adam's just doing it just because he can. It doesn't really add anything to the program for me, especially when you're doing more a lyrical piece. Backflip doesn't fit in as well. So both of these programs to me are still interesting. I'm still on the fence about them. Third place was a surprise, and that was Steven Gogolev of Canada, who is looking more and more like he could be the guy. I don't know. Canadian Nationals is going to be interesting in both the men's and the ladies, because maybe it's not going to be Roman. Roman did well here. I mean, him and Steven have basically flip-flopped kind of all season, and I don't know why Canada isn't sending anybody to Golden Spin. Makes no sense. But Steven had a really clean, kind of wow short program. The free skate to me doesn't work as well as the short program does. I feel like the style of the short program covers up a lot of the flaws that he has in his artistry, whereas skating to Rachmaninoff number 2 definitely showcases those deficiencies a little bit more. But he had 3 quads to start. Outside of a single axle Euler triple Salchow, everything else was really good. He actually did a triple flip, triple axle later in the program. I'm like, what is this, Steven? Do I like this program for him? No, I don't, but I like him landing jumps. Fourth place was Jason Brown, who was oh so close to making Grand Prix Final. Second place finisher would have gotten him there, and unfortunately his triple axles just let him down. His short program was better than last week. His combo was clean, but in this free skate, he fell on his first triple axle and put a hand down on the second one. He was perfect after that. I've seen a lot of people say they don't like this program. I disagree. Hard disagree. I love it. All right, fifth place, Roman Sadovsky. And this short program that he does is another repeat program. He did it a couple seasons ago. And the free skate is Claire de Lune. I feel like we've seen the outfit that he's using in Claire de Lune. I'm so impressed that Roman's able to pull off this quad Salchow in the second half of his program. He just had 2 small mistakes. He had a low landing on his quad toe, and he did a double toe instead of a triple toe in his Lutz toe combo, but really a good outing for him. Just unfortunate that he was behind his countrymen. Other notables in 7th place was Matteo Rizzo, and he has changed his free skate. My understanding was the free skate that he debuted at Europeans last year was going to be his free skate for this season. It was like some kind of opera. But he's doing Interstellar, which I love Interstellar. I don't know if I love Interstellar on Matteo. He's not there with his quads whatsoever. The quad loop, he was not attempting here, which probably makes sense because the man just had major hip surgery, and I know that the loop is the hardest jump on the hip a lot of the times. His quad toe was just not rotated well here. It feels like he's just way out of it, but Jackie Wong posted the Italian men's selection scores, and Grassel is way ahead, but Matteo's really not that far behind Nicola Mimola, so it looks like he's still in the running, even though it feels like he's so far away from what we are used to seeing from him. And the other person I'll mention is Jimmy Ma, who unfortunately finished in 11th place. Free skate is this interesting matchup of Can't Take My Eyes Off You, It's Raining Men, Macho Man, and YMCA. And earlier in the season, he was doing Turandot. So what a pivot. He is just living his best life in this program. It's very entertaining. The jumps were 100% not there. All right, so looking at the qualifiers for the men, Ilya comes in with the top scores, winning both of his Grand Prix in 30 points. Yuma Kageyama also with 30 points, winning both of his Grand Prix, even though I realize that my graphic is wrong. He has 30 points, not 28. Shun Sato with 28 points. Adam Seo Himfa with 26 points. Mikhail Shadorov with 24 points. And then Daniel Grassel gets the last spot with only 20 points, which is rare for a man to make it to the Grand Prix Final, or anybody to make it to the Grand Prix Final with 20 points. It just shows you how chaotic men's skating has been this season. All right, so Pam Achinko Awards. My goodness. In dance, I think definitely got to give it to Zingas and Kolesnik for skating well, having the top tech score, whether it was deserved or not. Making their first Grand Prix Final is amazing. And I'm also going to give one to Steven Gogolev because, hello, got his first Grand Prix medal, which was amazing, and he's skating the best that we've ever seen him. And Benoit looks like he's done a whole miracle with Steven Gogolev. So those are the two Pamchenko awards for Finlandia Trophy. All right, look here what's coming up next. Of course, that was the last Grand Prix event. We've got Talon Trophy coming up next weekend. That is a challenger event. The weekend after that, we've got the Grand Prix Final for both juniors and seniors in Nagoya, Japan. And we also have Golden Spin going on in Zagreb, Croatia. Next week, I will have a preview of Grand Prix Final in all 4 disciplines, so be looking for that. Warsaw Cup also happened this week. Sarah Maud Dupuis landed a triple axel and won her event. Wesley Chu did not look like he was going to be contending for a spot for Team Canada. Green and Parsons had really high scores in their rhythm dance, fabulous in their free dance, except for Caroline Green falling on Twizzles, and that cost them at least 8.5 points, and what would have at worst been second place finish and their best scores of the season. I don't know if they're going to make the Olympics or not. It's going to be heartbreaking for a team for sure, for the U.S. All right. Thank you guys so much for listening to the podcast. You can find me on all the socials at Ice Skate Podcast. Let me know what were some of your favorites from this past weekend. What do you think of all of the tech calling and scoring drama from ice dance this week? What can we do to make ice dance better, friends? Like, I'm so depressed. All right. I hope you have a good rest of your week. For those of you in the U.S., have a happy, wonderful Thanksgiving, and I'll be back in your podcatcher soon.